Offshoring of U.S. Jobs, The Hidden Truth About Global Outsourcing by Daniel McCall. What is offshoring? This is what we must first examine before we dig deeper into the issue. Simply put, it is the outsourcing or transfer of a U.S.-based job to another country. Currently, the most popular destinations for offshoring are India and China, although offshoring occurs to nearly every country in the world. Why do businesses do this? The answer is simple: money. Offshoring promises large potential savings from lower wages, especially when you consider that the standard of living for many developing nations is less than 20% of that of the United States. In addition, it promises regulatory freedom. Many businesses are tired of dealing with the excess bureaucracy and red tape associated with the United States government regulations. But while many people focus on the benefits, the downsides of offshoring are often overlooked. There are hidden costs associated with moving your business overseas. In addition, the lack of regulation, while often portrayed as a benefit, also can be the downfall of your offshoring operation. And finally, offshoring can severely damage your public relations. Let's begin by examining some of the hidden costs associated with the offshoring of U.S. jobs. This is an issue that has received a lot of attention in recent years, especially in business-related magazines. CIO Insight pointed out that you can expect to pay a significant portion of your savings out in severance and retirement expenses. Any employee that is laid off will have to be covered by severance pay, and many will also have to be covered in retirement expenses that can last for years. In addition, the magazine pointed out that the instability in currency markets can affect your amount of savings. As the U.S. dollar weakens against that of developing nations, what you may account as $1 million in potential savings may only be $500,000 in potential savings 10 years down the road. CIO magazine pointed out that initial travel expenses are often overlooked, and these can cost up to 10% of your first year savings. This is because you will need to send a number of executives and management teams to the location as you scout out the site and begin operations. You will have to continue these travel expenses throughout the life of the operation, although they are expected to be heaviest during the first few years. This is partially what Entrepreneur magazine referred to as excessive administrative costs. But in addition to these high travel expenses, many companies have actually found that though they are laying off many low-earning employees, they have to hire a number of executive and managerial levels to help manage the entire operation. This too can be a significant expense. The magazine also pointed out that vendor fees are often overlooked. In order to successfully offshore your business, you will most likely need an offshore vendor to help organize the logistics of the operation. Fees for this can be as high as 10% of your entire budget. Perhaps the most excessive expense was pointed out by Business Week, and that's because it is not just an expense to an individual business. It is an expense to the entire U.S. economy, and that is a reduction of the gross domestic product. Since the GDP is part of the calculations for everything from bond ratings to the currency valuations, a drop in U.S. GDP has significant ramifications. This too must be considered before you offshore any job. Now let us look at the lack of regulation. Many businesses would view this as a benefit, but it has a number of risks as well. Human rights violations are common in many developing nations, especially when concerning employees. Sweatshops and child labor are all too common. Even though larger countries such as India and China have recently enacted many laws to help combat these issues, it is estimated that as many as 10% of Indian children have never attended school and instead work in factories, often the same factories that their parents have spent their whole lives in. Environmental damage is also a concern. With a complete lack of regulation on environmental concerns in many countries, greenhouse gas emissions have skyrocketed. China and India now lead the world in these emissions. A number of other ecological issues are also seen in these countries. The Council on Foreign Affairs estimates that as much as 70% of China's fresh water is now polluted, largely due to industrial runoff. Lack of safety and quality regulations has also led to a number of issues. You may recall several highly publicized incidents from the year 2007 dealing with Chinese imports. The first was melamine-tainted dog food. Melamine is a chemical which is used in the manufacture of plastic. However, an unscrupulous vendor added this chemical to protein used in the manufacture of dog food in order to falsify industry tests regarding quality. The result was hundreds of dogs killed around the nation. Later that same year, Mattel Corporation was forced to recall over 13 million toys due to lead paint used by a vendor in order to cut costs. Because of this, China instigated a sweeping reform of its safety regulations. However, within a few months, it happened again, this time with a medical company manufacturing heparin, which is a common blood thinner. A vendor sold the Chinese-based company a tainted chemical, which resulted in a high level of sulfur in the drug. The end result was 85 people killed around the world. While these issues have clear legal and ethical ramifications, they also have another ramification, and that is damaged public relations. Your brand image is a large portion of the value of your company, and any damage to it has significant ramifications. Just ask Nike. They've been fighting sweatshop allegations for nearly 20 years. There are over a dozen boycott Nike groups around the world, and many protests at the unveiling of every one of their new product lines. Similar issues have been faced by Gap and Walmart. In general, U.S. consumers dislike offshoring. A number of surveys have found that this is because many of the U.S. employees have been affected by offshoring personally. Either they themselves or someone in their family has lost a job that has been sent overseas. Also complicating the issue is the fact that a number of tech support companies have offshored all of their consumer relations departments. This has led to so much frustration with consumers that companies such as Dell and Capital One have actually decided to move a portion of their consumer relations departments back to the United States. In summary, you must consider the whole picture before you decide to offshore a job. There are hidden costs to be factored in, which can severely decrease your potential for profits. The lack of regulation, which may seem like a benefit at first, can be your downfall. Can your company survive a scandal related to sweatshops or environmental disaster? And finally, you must consider the impact on your public relations. You must carefully evaluate all of these issues before you decide to offshore any jobs. I will now be happy to take any questions you may have.